Okay, then let's continue. I said we would like to stick to the time as much as possible, given that although we have a broader audience. So in the next 1.5 hours, we will cover the next 6 topics. So it's mainly finance-oriented topics, but a lot of them are very relevant to you. Particular funds and grants management and all the project systems, which is part of the grants management module. So we're going to cover them now, and then we will do the next break after human resource administration. Starting with funds and cost management. Has anyone of you heard the term coding block? Okay. The coding block is a key terminology and a key element in the Umoja system. So the coding block, in very simple terms, describes the financial structure that is built into the Umoja system. So it describes, for instance, all your cost centers and so on. And based on this coding block, although then later on a lot of the analysis will be run and expenses will be posted to those cost centers. So there is a cost center structure in this coding block is defined by every entity. So although by now, for those entities going live in cluster 3, the coding block has already been defined. So if you're interested how the coding block looks like for your organization, please reach out to your local deployment team and see how this has been defined for your office. The coding block, what is new also in comparison to IMS, is that the coding block is broader than it was in IMIS. The new thing in this coding block is it brings together 4 different dimensions: the financial accounting, funds management, grants management, and controlling perspective. The good thing is you only define the financial structure once, and then there is a lot of interlinks across those different dimensions. So usually you only need to select 1 or 2 fields, and then all the other remaining information is derived based on the coding block that you have defined. But we will talk about this in more detail later on. But it's important to know, so we will provide far more structure and far more reporting functionalities in this way of the defined coding block. The second big change is there is a new standardized chart of accounts, and this chart of accounts for the first time is all standardized across all entities that work in Umoja. The chart of accounts, it's the in financial accounting, there's the chart of accounts, which is basically the breakdown structure of your different general ledger categories, and in the same way, there is a chart of accounts for all the different funds management expenses. The chart of accounts, the nice thing by standardizing this chart of accounts is, as I said, you can do far better benchmarking across all entities because we now apply the same terminology and structure across all entities. The second thing is that this chart of accounts that has been introduced now is far more detailed. So we have more than 3,000 different accounts. They are in a breakdown structure, but as you can imagine, by increasing this structure, you also have far more detailed reporting functionalities. There is also a link between procurement and this chart of accounts. So we talked earlier about the material master catalog. So every item that is on the material master catalog, for instance, this remote clicker, is automatically linked to the chart of accounts. So when we define this good initially, then it's already defined to which account this product will be posted later on. So it basically means you need to not to do it again and again, but by selecting a certain item from the catalog, it will be automatically posted against the right accounts. Yeah, and the important thing is transparency. So by integrating all the information into one system from all those different IMS systems, by increasing the structures to the coding block and this standardized chart of accounts, we will have far better reporting functionalities. And there is also one important change in terms of transparency. All this information will be available to everyone across all entities in Umoja. So it basically means if you work in UNEP, you can also see all the funds and grants data later on from other entities, but likewise other entities can also see your data. So there is really great transparency in this new system. Yeah, and business intelligence will be then the key tool in order to get access to this data, and we have a system demonstration of business intelligence later on so that you can also see how the look and feel of the system is. And as said, you will have access really to all this data for every organization or entity that is part of Umoja. In terms of functionality for funds management, it is important to stress that budget formulation is not yet part of the Umoja system. This is supposed to be part of Umoja Extension 2, which will be rolled out starting in 2017. So the solution that you will get on the 1st of June does not contain budget formulation. So the assumption is that the budget formulation process is done, and we start then in Umoja based on this defined budgets. Even if budget formulation itself is not yet in Umoja, you will see that you have a lot of benefits when it comes to the next cycle of budget formulation, because based on the increased transparency that you have in the system, you can identify all the spending patterns, how did you spend your money in the past, in which time intervals, so you have far more transparency that you then can use for the next budget formulation process. So now let's have a look at those functionalities that are part of the functionality that will go live on the 1st of June. It's budget distributions, the issuance of funds, appropriations, allotments, redeployments, budget implementation, budget return on close, and as said, also the whole part of budget reporting and analysis, which is basically then the main benefit of this tool. There are two important controls being built into the system. The first is a budget control. So there is a hard-coded budget control in the system that prevents overspending. So in the future, you cannot overspend budget. So this will also apply to the grants management, so contributions, when we will have a look at this. We know that in some cases today, budget have been overspent. This is technically not possible anymore in the Umoja system because there is just a hard stop in the system that will prevent you from consuming budget that you do not have. In addition to the budget control, there is a so-called cash control. A cash control is a liquidity point of view on a similar aspect. So if you have a budget of $10 million US, but you only have received $7 million in cash from the donor, for instance, then you can also only spend up to $7 million. Only if you receive the full cash, you can also start spending the cash. This is very similar to what you have in private. You can only start spending the money that you have physically on your bank account. If you don't have money in cash on your bank account, this money needs to come from somewhere. So therefore, all of this cash control is built into the system. There are very few exceptions to this cash control. One exception is we know that in some grants agreement, this is part of the agreement. For instance, in agreements with the European Union, sometimes you only get 80% of the cash, and only then if you have completed the full project, you get the remaining 20% of the cash. If this is part of the agreement, then there will be an exception by the controller, but if it's not part of the agreement, then you can only spend the money where you have received the cash. Yes, please.
Apologies, just if it's possible to ask, because one question that's related to that. We are receiving money from the German government, and they only give us money every 3 months, unconditional, no reporting required in a sense as a condition. But according to the regulations that the finance ministry has put up, they say that they would like to have the money on their accounts generating interest instead of transferring the whole amount to the project partner generating interest there. I mean, right now the interest is very low, so it in reality doesn't make a difference. But if we have an agreement that says, yes, definitely over the next 3, 4, 5 years you will get that amount, and it will be transferred like a paycheck, basically, almost like that. Is it then possible to do, like to modify the system? Because if we can't have personnel, long-term contracts, etc. All these commitments that we do, we can't do that over 3 months, which is our de facto financial horizon. So, it would be good if you have an opinion on that. Thanks.
Yeah. So the cash control in the system will exist as it is. So the solution can only be a policy solution. So if the controller says yes to this particular agreement that this cash position can be bridged, then the question is where does the cash come from in order to bridge the cash position. So in the system will always bring this hard stop, and this has been decided. So there will be not an exception in the system. The only exception then can be done is that you can get cash from somewhere else for the time to bridge this. In terms of cash that you can use for this kind of a purpose, it can only be other unearmarked funds. So for instance, if you have a cash reserve, it's not allowed to use cash from other earmarked funds that have a different purpose. So, but if there is an agreement from the controller, and if there is other unearmarked funds that you can use to bridge the cash position, then you can do a redeployment to this particular grant to bridge the cash position, but the cash control in the system will be active. So this will not be a technical solution in the end. This needs to be first a policy question. If you have an agreement, then it can be implemented.
Yeah. Maybe on follow-up on this, but can we already start requesting this type of exceptions? Because this is going to beat us the day after Umoja.
No, definitely. This is also the reason why we emphasize this right now, because we are fully aware that this has some lead time.
So there is a procedure to request these exceptions?
It's a decision of the controller. So far, as said, for those agreements with the European Union, I know that there is an exception. For other cases, this needs to be decided on a case-by-case basis by the controller to what extent it's then allowed to bridge the cash position.
But I'm asking is there is a procedure to do that? A procedure to request this exception?
So this is a controller question. We can. So what I'm aware of, usually then your office writes an email to the controller. They have this controller email address and requests it. So I'm not sure about the system-based. Or it's not basically a Umoja. It's only related to Umoja. So therefore, I don't know the details of this process. But I would just reach out to them and request it. Yeah.
Sorry, a follow-up. Just to clarify, grants in are pledges or cash collected? Is it the pledge contribution, like commitment of the cash, only cash, like we work with EU?
Cash, yes.
Well,
we know that a lot of agreements today do not follow the strategy, and we all know that we need to work because as of today, we know that this policy already exists today. Yeah. What happens implicitly today is today you cannot pay if you don't have money on your bank account.
Precisely,
so there is an implicit cash pooling that even because then they just take other cash, that was for a different purpose, and they just pay it for your purpose. But this is not according to the rules. So therefore now in that system it's a pre-built-in check, so that it's only based on an exception. If you have an exception by the controller, then you can do it. But this implicit cash pooling, where you just use other cash that is earmarked for a different purpose, will not work anymore.
I understand. I'm a finance officer, and I fully share that concern. Our concern is that UNODC, we are working mostly on pledge letters plus cash collected with regard to EU. So with EU, it is more or less clarified, the controller. But it means at the same time that, let's say, 90 or 80% of our operation, which is based on the pledge contributions, we will have to ask for exceptions for each and every.
Yeah, or ask her. I think the long-term strategy should be to change the agreements with the member states in order to be able to work according to the rules. And we also had lengthy discussions on this topic when we just had the session in Vienna, where UNODC all over the directors level. So we are fully aware that this exists today. We can just communicate what the official position of the controller is, and we know that there is quite some work that needs to be done, either in a way that you try to change the agreements with the member states or to ask for exceptions. And if you get an exception, you still need to have a central reserve that is non-earmarked in order to do so. And this central reserve needs to be in your entity, as far as I know. So it's not, you cannot use cash from other cash reserves of other entities. So in that sense, yes, it's a big change, and through Umoja, I think now this policy that already exists is now being hard-coded into the system, so it becomes far more transparent. That needs to be dealt in a proper way in the future.
So precisely, it will help us further with the pledge attribution, but it will create some constraints with regard to the implementation of activities.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, we talk about later in grants. What you will see as soon as you have the pledge, you can have first an unreleased budget for planning purpose, but you can only release the budget in the system as soon as you have the cash receipt in the system. So it's hard-coded in the system. Yeah, so these are two important things to remember, budget control and cash control. An additional important thing is, as we saw in the source to acquire section now, a requisitioner can already do a funds availability check and they consume funds. So therefore the role of budget officers is also changing, because budget officers far more become a monitoring role. So in order to see what are the spending patterns on different funds, where do you need to redeploy funds from one to the other fund category. So there's all this, the nature of work is changing significantly for the budget teams. Another advantage that we have in Umoja is that there will be no need for sub-allotments anymore or financial authorizations to other entities that are already in the Umoja system. It basically means if UN Habitat agrees to pay for travel for a UNEP staff member, so in the future this UNEP staff member can just select, when you create the travel request, that it's being booked against the cost center from UN Habitat, and if they agree, then it's done in the system. So there is no background processes of first having sub-allotments and so on. So this is another area where we'll be far more efficient cross entities and all the cross locations, because it's all in one system. I emphasized this one already, so that the budget team have a full view of all budget across all offices, so it's really far more transparent than it was in the past. The budget teams will also need to have a good understanding of the other modules, because the other function modules will consume the budget. So if you're interested, what does this really mean, this budget code and so on, so therefore the budget team should also be familiar with other functional areas. So this goes far more, now we talked about this integrative nature of the system, so this ends up, because a lot of the transactions in the end have financial implications, so therefore the finance teams, be it budget or financial accounting, should also be familiar with the other modules to some extent. There is also in process that OPBA proposes that local entities will be given more flexibility for allotments and redeployment, so this depends on the specific entity to what extent you will be allowed to do this. But there is the tendency is going in the direction that you will be more flexible to do so. Okay, I think we covered this. To summarize it, so the first thing is we will have now this coding block, and we strongly recommend every one of you also to have a look at the coding block, how it's been defined for your entity. There is an online computer-based training course on the coding block in general. We strongly recommend you to do this online training, because it's the financial structure of the system, and it's the core of the system, so therefore it's very good to be familiar with the coding block. In addition, we talked about the standardized chart of accounts, which is now standardized across all entities. Also on top, it's far more detailed than it was in the past, so which again supports analysis. In addition, we talked about the two controls, so budget control and cash control, which are now both being hard-coded in the system. The roles of the budget teams will be more analytical rather than policing the use of budget, so it's more about monitoring the different spending patterns on different accounts. BI reporting will be the tool where you have access to all this data. As said, you have access to all the data, not only limited to your entity, and there will also be no need anymore for sub-allotments between offices. Yeah.
The budget and the cash control, you said it has to be approved by the controller if it is exceptional. Will there be any delegated authority to, I guess USG is up higher than the Assistant Secretary General, but every exception has to go to New York. And the other thing is, how flexible are we in terms of adjusting the PSC, program support cost? I think that is usually the controller's responsibility, but I think in UNEP and Habitat, we had a bit of a flexibility, and I don't know whether under this new system it is going to be more rigid.
Do you want to
For the adjustment of the program support costs, I don't know if there's any flexibility in that yet, because when we talk about services delivery, we talk about the standardization of the catalog of cost recovery services, and that's all being determined by the controller. So I'm not sure about that. We could find out whether there's any flexibility. I very much doubt it, that there will be flexibility in determining varying degrees of program support costs, but let me be certain about that. On your first question about delegated authority, I don't think this, in terms of the usage of funding across, if you are, to redeploy funds from one area to another area, that's more policy decision that will sit with the process owner for finance, the controller, so that would be a controller decision. Any exception to that, like Marcus pointed out, would have to go to the controller. There's a memo written sometime in December, I think, around this, or was there? That was a service delivery one. But there should be also some guidance coming out on this as well. Right now, the decision is that the controller will decide.
Any further questions on funds management? Okay, then we have a look at the next area, being grants management. So grants, as said, these are contributions. In the future, you can manage those contributions that we call grants in Umoja, in the Umoja system. This is a sample version of an end-to-end process, how this works to manage a grant in Umoja. The first thing is you initiate the grant with the sponsor, and this is outside of Umoja. So the process starts as soon as you sign an agreement. But then the first step in Umoja is that every sponsor needs to have a master data record in the system. We already talked this morning about master data records, for instance, for vendors, materials, services. The same applies again for all sponsors, donors. They also need to have a master data record. The good thing again is you only need to enter them once, and this applies across all entities. So as soon as you have them once in the system, you can reuse the sponsor, but they need to be created first. Then you create the grant. When you create a grant, it's important to know that it requires a lot of data that needs to be set up initially to set up this grant properly. So this is usually quite some effort. We talked also this morning about data conversion, that the data that we have today on those grants is not sufficient, that it fits to the data requirements that we have in the Umoja system. That is the main reason why we have to spend that much effort in order to further enrich the grants. And therefore you can imagine, although when you set up a new grant in the future, there is some data that needs to be staged first. The important point is while we have to spend more efforts in setting the grant up properly, we will then have huge benefits when it comes to reporting, because if we set up the grant properly, then we can get the reporting almost out of the box, because then all the expenses will automatically be posted to the right accounts, and then we can get the very easy reporting on grants. Then you can also see, you can first create and release a project. We will talk about in more detail how you can create those projects. And then you create and approve an unreleased budget. And then you can see the step number 8 is process cash receipt. And only as soon as you have received the cash, then you can create and approve then released budget. So this is the implementation of the cash control that we talked about earlier. And as soon as you then have the released budget, you can process transactions for the grant, so you can purchase, you can buy travel and different activities. And then you can close the grant towards the end of the life cycle. So this is a very simple grant. And now on the next slide, we will have a look at a scenario where you have an implementing partner. So where you have an agreement and you give money to an implementing partner in order to implement a certain project. In this case, you all the first need to sign an agreement with an implementing partner. This is again being outside of Umoja. And then we start in Umoja again with the master data step. So all the implementing partners needs to be recorded once as master data records in the system, and then you can reuse them again and again. The next step is you create a so-called pass-through grant. So this is for those implementation partners. This is the grant type that you use for this. And you can then link the implementation grant, the pass-through grant, to the parent grant. And you can also create multiple pass-through grants and link them to one parent grant. As soon as you have created this pass-through grant, you transfer budget from the parent grant to the pass-through grant, and you create a purchase order. Because in some sense, this implementing partner implementing a certain grant is nothing else than buying a service or buying a good. So in that sense, you can see we follow the same logic of creating a purchase order. The only big difference when buying a product or a service is usually you first receive the service or the good and then you pay. In this scenario, the sequence of the steps is different because you first spend the money and then you receive the service. So this is the step number 7. You also create a down payment request in advance for implementing partner. So this cash philosophy although is built into this pass-through grant scenario. So we give the cash first before they can start spending against this available cash. As soon as you receive the service, there is something being called a service entry sheet. So basically the service entry sheet is your confirmation that the service has been delivered as defined. So only if you have a service entry sheet you can then further progress. You can then repeat this process again and again, and perhaps you can also get a refund from the implementing partner if money is left, and then towards the end of the life cycle you can close the pass-through grant and you can notify the parent grant that the pass-through grant is closed. Any questions to the pass-through grants? Yeah.
So does it mean that the pass-through grant will be disbursed 100%?
Sorry?
Is the disbursement going to be 100% because we have been disbursing 70 and 30?
So, in terms of our accounting then, when we give the money...
Yeah, do we give 100% to the partner? Or do we still give...
No, you can do it in different tranches. You don't have to do it at once. You can do it incrementally. But you give the cash first before they start spending, but you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it in different steps. Yeah, you can do partial payments, so it doesn't have to be in one step. So,
Can I? Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have a bit of difficulty to follow because you say you do this, do that, but who exactly? I mean, is it the substantive officer? You have all these names, but you are not referring to them, all these functions, you're not referring to them. We don't know who we are, clearly. So maybe you need to be a little bit more specific, because for me is okay. Habitat will receive the goods and so on, yes, but who in Habitat and which is the relation with the final user is quite important, I think. And also, the other question is, will we as program officer, let's say, or people that are managing projects, be able to access this every single place to see what is happening in reality, and for instance, see the budget, see if the budget line has the money. I mean, because this is one of the major problem we have now with IMDIS. We are not allowed to access it.
Yeah, so there are different questions. So when we talk about you, so it's not about you personally, but for us it's also difficult to know who this you in the end is, because we talked this morning about user access mapping, and this is up to the entity to exactly define then who performs which role, and we know that some entities assign the certain role to the substantive offices, while others decide to do it centrally in an administrative office. So therefore, for us, there is no general rule who will perform this role. This is being done in user access mapping, and therefore we would now need to know, in case of UNEP, Habitat, UNODC, what the decision is, who will perform this role. In general, there is, yes, a lot of transparency. You just said in IMDIS you can't see it, in Umoja you can see it, but to what extent you can see data, again, for sure depends all on your user access role that you are assigned to. Yeah. So therefore, it's difficult, unfortunately, for us to be very specific in that sense, because it just depends how your office decides to do it. If you have an appropriate role, then you will have access to all this information. And our, let's say, at least our guideline definitely is that we would like that project managers have access to this information, because we would like to have a very transparent system. But in the end, it depends on your office how you make those decisions. Okay, the next picture just shows the tight integration across different function modules, and these are the other modules of the coding block, like financial accounting, controlling, and funds management. We already talked about the cash availability control when we talked about funds management, so I will not repeat this here. You have a lot of possibilities also to have a separate view of the financial transactions from both the sponsor and the UN view. So you can also accommodate different time slices, budget period differences. There is a lot of flexibility when you set up the grants, how you can define the different time slices and reporting views. But as said, this requires initial investment in order to set up the different functionalities. In terms of recognition of revenue, this is based on IPSAS. So if it's an unconditional revenue, we just had an example of an unconditional revenue, this is now the accounting perspective to it, then it will be recorded as a revenue immediately. If it's a conditional donation, it will be first recorded as a liability and will only be a revenue as soon as you meet the underlying condition. The same applies for in-kind contributions, so they are treated in the same way than monetary contributions. We talked about the implementation, the pass-through grants with the implementing partners, where we have this purchase order and the service entry sheets. If you have a grant out to an end beneficiary where you don't receive a service in that sense, then this money is granted to end beneficiaries and is expensed immediately. So this is direct expense. Whereas in the other scenario, you first give the money, and only if you certify that the service has been performed, it will be recorded as an expense. This is a visualization of how the process is today in IMS and Umoja, so we won't go into those details, and it's difficult to read. As said, the main difference is you can now do it in the Umoja system end to end, and in terms of effort, you will have more efforts in setting up the grant initially, but when it comes to reporting, you will have far less efforts than you may have today in terms of reporting. Yeah, the key changes, just to summarize it, it's a completely new concept. It requires a lot of master data. It's very important to emphasize this again and again as a key data conversion challenge that we face today, to get all these grants ready to be in a format by the 1st of June so that we can properly work with this grant information. In terms of the grant budget, we have this two built-in controls, being budget control and cash control, and the budget is only released upon cash receipt, and we have the concept of pass-through grants where you can link then the implementing partners to the parent grant. We have in the future a central repository system to store all the agreements with donors, implementing partners, so you can again see there's a lot of transparency. If you would like to run an analysis, how many grants did one particular sponsor or donor fund, so we can do all this analysis across different entities, and I think there's a lot of interesting information as soon as this information is in the system. It is also designed to comply with the IPSAS requirements. And there's also one more functionality that I would like to introduce. This is called the main implementation grant. So in those cases where you have multiple sponsors, this can also be captured in Umoja, and then you will just set up a grant version which is called a main implementation grant. You can also implement an automated tracking of grant lifecycle milestones. So if you define milestones in the grant lifecycle, then you can track, track then those defined milestones. And I think the other points, we covered them already. So that was the grants management part, and now we are talking about the second function module, which is very related to it, and this is project systems. Project systems is the tool to define projects, and projects then can be linked to those grants. In very simple words, this kind of project functionality allows you to define a structure, and by defining structure, to define cost collectors. Yeah? So you can define this is a project and this is the sub-project of this project, and then you can assign costs to those projects and sub-projects. You can build hierarchies up to a level 4. So it basically, for instance, you can start with a region, then you can break it down into countries, break it further down into cities, and then break it further down into suburbs of cities, for example. By defining those structures, you can then use this predefined structure in order to collect costs against those structures. So for instance, if you would like to know how much money you spent then in a certain country or in a certain city, you can track all this information in the system. So you can see there is a lot of opportunities when using these structures, the project structures. The main challenge basically is how to set up and how to define those project structures, and there is also some benefit of aligning those structures across different projects, because if you have some kind of standardization of those project structures across different projects, then you can also do cross-project analysis. If you would like to see how much money did you spend in one country, and it's always the same country how you use it in your breakdown structure, then you will know how many projects did we run in Spain, for example, and so on. And you can not only do it then within your entity, but you could run this across all entities. If you would like to know how many projects did we run in Spain across UNEP, Habitat, OCHA, and everyone else, we can get it based on this information. But this is the assumption that the breakdown structures are somehow used in a way that is to some extent standardized. If you are interested in the guidance of those project structures have also been defined by your entities. Some of those entities have then, for instance, defined that the first level and the second level is always standardized, and if you break it further down, then it's your choice. But if you're interested in your project templates that have been defined for you, please also reach out to your local deployment team and see how this structure looks like. The technical tool that we use in the Umoja system, just to introduce all the terminology, it's called a work breakdown structure element, so WBSE. So this is exactly the breakdown structure that you use for those projects in order to break it down into further levels. In addition to those work breakdown structure elements, there's something that is called internal order. So if you have a project where you don't need to break it down further, you can use an internal order. An internal order also serves as a cost collector, but it's far easier to set up compared to the WBSEs. So for instance, if you would like to track the costs of an event like this, you can just create an internal order, then book the expenses against this internal order event, and then you know what the costs of this particular event was if you don't have a need to further break this down into substructures. Where was it? Yeah.
What is your definition of a project manager? Because often the terminology is used for what we call here fund management offices. So I just want your clarification.
Of a project manager. So now there's no role in the system being now project manager. So therefore, this is not a user role. So we only have definitions for user roles. In terms of project manager, now my definition, which is now not a Umoja definition, but if you're responsible for a certain project, be it an ozone project or whatever it is, and you're responsible for the resources and for the delivery of this project, then you would be considered in this sense the project manager, and then you can benefit from setting up this project, and then you can track how much money did I spend on this particular project on the following cost categories and so on. So this project structure gives you the programmatic breakdown of your expenses. In addition, you also can get the breakdown by the type of expense. So for instance, travel, staff cost, training cost. So you have all of this kind of breakdown. So you can then know if you would like to, going back to our example with this example of Spain, if you would like to know how much money did I spend on staff, on non-staff, on training and so on, then you can also break it down like this in those project structures. And from my definition, I think the project manager is the one that is responsible for the project delivery and for the resources in order to complete the project in time and in budget and to manage those resources accordingly.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, are we allowed to define our work breakdown structures?
As said, so the project structures, the templates have been defined by the entities. So I'm not sure if you're from UNEP, Habitat. UNEP, so please ask your local deployment team. They have defined the template for the project structure. As far as I'm not 100% sure about UNEP, but what I heard, some of those entities said the first two levels are predefined, and you can then define the third and the fourth level of the project breakdown structure. But about the detailed guidelines for UNEP, to what extent they have standardized it across the offices, please ask for the template that has been defined for you.
Okay, I'll follow up, but just in case, so things like measuring the cost on, say, communication, which today we can't do because we look at printing and meetings and so on. Is that possible now, using that?
Yeah, so we now need to differentiate two things. So one is the expense type. Yeah, so the expense type, is it a training cost? What type? Is it travel cost? Is it a procurement cost? Is it a salary cost? So these kind of type of information, this is always collected, and this is what you can use. In terms of communication costs, you may know what telephone billing costs are, but it's the definition, what is communication cost. But all these, the cost types are automatically captured in the system. In addition, if you would like to know not the cost type, but the cost purpose, so for what you have used this purpose, then you apply the project structures. So if you would like to know, I used this training here for Umoja, then this type of, the expense type of this here would be training costs, and if the purpose of the expense would be Umoja. So, and this is the same what you can do for your project. You can say the purpose of this is to build a building for a school or something like that, and the type is then we need to ask a construction company to build it. So you have always these two dimensions, and then the dimension gives you a lot of information if you bring these dimensions together. Okay, so the benefits of this tool is you can have a controlling budgeting for projects. We also talked about, to the extent possible, of a standardized project management. We will have access to all the voluntary funded projects in the system. We also have a streamlined integration between the grants management and the project management solution because it's all in one system. You have an enhanced transparency of all the data, and you can also track the disaggregated costs at a very lower level. So we talked about expenditures by thematic areas or expected accomplishment, countries, regions. So it depends how you set up your projects, and then you can analyze it in this way. Okay, so the summary of grants and project, it's a new concept in that system. It requires a substantial master data maintenance. We just emphasize it again and again to be aware that there is considerable effort during data conversion, but also then as soon as you set them up. It helps you support the administration over the whole life cycle. We have this built-in cash availability control. You can then release and control based on donor agreements different time slices, so you have all the reporting functionalities. We have a concept of pass-through grants if you have an implementing partner. We have a concept of main implementation grant if you have multiple donors. You can define those projects as cost collectors, and in the end we are coming back to the overall goal of Umoja. So by that we try to increase transparency and in the end, all the efficiency.
Just go back to the point of the confusion around who you are and what role you play. In the grants module, there are 9 enterprise roles, 9 different roles. And these are grant account user, grant account approver, grant creator, let me see what others I have here. Grant budget user, unreleased, that's for the pre-posting of unreleased budget. Grant budget approver, unreleased. Grants budget user, released. So these 9 roles have various authorities in the system to do various things. Now, if you are the person who creates a grant, you will get the grants creator, GM grants creator role. That will allow you to create and maintain a grant and all the master data that's related to it. You'll be able to create grants purchase orders. If you get the role grants account approver, then your role is to approve the work, approve whatever comes through the workflow that the grants creator does. So how you are structured in your team, if you are the program manager of a number of projects, and these projects are created by other people, and the workflow will go through to you as the approver to approve the grant. So we're talking general functionality, but as Marcus said, in your individual entities, they will decide with you how these roles are going to be mapped to users, and what role you play then you will perform those functions. I hope that helps to clarify a little more. When we say the generic you, we're just talking about the functionality, but there are roles within this functionality that gives the person who holds that role the access to do various things. And in many cases, you will, as the chiefs at the unit chief, section chief level, you will be the approver in many cases of people who create the grants and create the grants master data. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, just on the practical side, I think we need to prepare quite a bit. So how do we access this master data now? Can we access the master data and go through it and see whether the key partners we're going to use for implementing programs and projects are in there? Can you give us a link?
So this again refers to the local deployment teams. The local deployment teams for every entity. So we have a list of data objects, and for every data object, there is one or multiple colleagues being assigned as data collector and as data validator. So if you reach out to your local deployment team and you would like to say, I'm interested in this and this data element. So for instance, I would like to review the catalog of vendor data, then they will tell you who has collected this vendor data, and they can share this list for you for your entity.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether I have to ask this question here or maybe later, but I'm just wondering now here. The way we heard about this, the project management or delivery is mostly the tools that really helps the project to deliver in terms of time and cost. But there is one element for the project in terms of quality of results to deliver. Like, for example, we had this result-based management, theory of change, and other things. How are these two things can be married together? Because Umoja now is just doing all these support services, but it's the key element that the quality, that we have to put time, cost, and quality. How are they going to be integrated?
Yeah, very good question. So the content, or the type of the project and the purpose of the project and the management of the quality and the content itself is not yet managed in Umoja. So we understand from UNEP this is being done in the PIMS system, and UNEP has then defined how they would like to, what should be done in PIMS and what should be done in Umoja. The plan is then with the extension 2 to add further functionality in the Umoja system. So at some point, hopefully, we can all replace the PIMS system and have this information all in the Umoja system. But as of now, it's only the financial part of the project management that is in the current release of Umoja. And from the discussion that we had yesterday with Christoph and Moses for UNEP now, is that they have a plan then how to, so they basically also compared what is the footprint of Umoja, what is the footprint of the PIM system, where is the overlap right now, then there will be a transition period. Christoph talked about already trying to although migrate PIMS in a way in terms of terminology and how things are captured in the system in order to prepare at some point to integrate this order to Umoja. So it will be an incremental process. Now in the first instance, it's mostly the financial part of managing projects, but the idea definitely is to add further functionality then in future releases. Yes, please. Gender. So I'm not sure. To what extent? So what we definitely have. So we talked about the organizational structure. So we now build, every employee of us will have a record in the system, and we can do a lot of analysis in terms of gender based on this data, and if we relate it also to project data. So, but I'm not sure now in which kind of gender spending you're referring to. The mic reset.
The UN increasingly has to report on how much we spend on gender in our programmatic expenditure. Mm-hmm. So if we have a project that specifically benefits women, or if it has gender mainstream throughout and significantly contribute through mainstreaming. And this spending should be tracked so we can make gender budgeting budget reports. Is that currently possible within the system?
So, yeah, technically, yes. I think this is more a procedural question, how to reinforce that every project that is a gender-related project also gets this tick, I'm a gender-related project. So in that sense, yes, you can mark project what the purpose is, but the main challenge is how to make sure that everyone checks it like this. But yeah, you can define those structures. Yeah. Yes, please.
Just to say something about that, there is a module, the sustainability module, which is part of the license of Umoja. I don't know if and when this module will be rolled out, but this module has about 400 KPIs. So gender, if there was educational benefits, and so on and so forth, environmental benefits, and those you can actually mark out, and so report. I know that we have this economic, social sustainability, and environment all in there. So that module can actually capture a lot of the deliverables. What goals were met. But I don't know if we will get that module.
Yeah, so just to comment on the sustainability module, so we also have the license as part of the overall license deal that we have for Umoja. So this might be an additional functionality for future releases. So as of now, this is not part of the functionality that you will see on the 1st of June. But yeah, it would be a very nice tool then to do far more reporting than according based on this tool's functionalities. Okay, then we continue. The next section, we will not cover every slide in detail because financial accounting is usually more a back office function. We would just like to share the key changes with you. It's again that we, similar what we've discussed before, so it's the consolidation of different systems into one system. So there is all the elimination for inter-office vouchers, transaction between offices within Umoja, so as everyone works in one system. An important point to emphasize is that the complexity increases of financial accounting. We already discussed this all in funds management because we now have this broader coding block. We have this very fine, granular, standardized chart of accounts. And from our experience from lessons learned, cluster 1 and 2 was that particular financial accounting is an area where we had a lot of issues, where we although realized that the change in the nature of the work and in the required knowledge profiles is significant. So we really, financial accounting, you need to have an accounting background in the future in order to handle those documents in the right way. So we know that today often perhaps an invoice is just recorded in IMIS without understanding the full accounting implications. So in the future, financial accounting will be a more complex role that also requires the respective profiles. There's one company code for all Umoja entities. We also have in the future more details. So for instance, we can break down further the accounts payable, accounts receivable, so we can exactly track what we spend on which sub-vendor and so on. So this is information that is not available today in IMIS. It's also important that, again, we had this end-to-end processes, and almost every process has a financial accounting implication. So therefore, a lot of issues, you realize them in financial accounting, and then often if you don't follow the proper sequence of steps, then you have to undo the previous steps upstream. So it's usually quite cumbersome then to correct those issues. So therefore, it's better if we can avoid this in the first place, and therefore we are sharing this message also with you, because the other function modules often have an impact on financial accounting, and you can support the accounting colleagues by processing your part of the process properly. I think we can, this is an example. I think we captured this one as well. The change in mindset, so although in terms of reporting, in terms of monitoring, although as it becomes more complex, there is a continuous need for monitoring. Again, an example from lessons learned. After cluster 1 and cluster 2, we had a huge volume of unreconciled bank data. This basically means if you compare the items on your bank record and compare it with your financial accounting records, they didn't match, and we had a lot of issues. It was a lot of manual work to correct those issues. So there is also this change in mindset. If you need to implement monitoring mechanisms in order to ensure that you do not have an increasing number of those problems, so you need to regularly monitor your accounts to make sure that everything runs as designed. As said, we would only like to do a very quick run on financial accounting. The key takeaways are the standardized chart of accounts. We now have the sub-ledgers for accounts payable and accounts receivable, so by vendor and customer history. We have the broader coding block, and accounting is very much interlinked with all the other functional modules. Okay, so we have now 3 more topics to go, and then we do a next break. Treasury and cash management and all the payroll and benefits management, we will do those ones all rather quickly. We will focus on the key relevant items that will also be relevant to you. And then we will spend a little bit more time on human resource administration, because this is all the relevant for you as managers. In terms of treasury and cash management, the first important change is that the goal is to only have one or maximum of 2 bank accounts in the future per currency. By that we can significantly reduce the number of bank accounts that we have today. So I think today we have more than 700 bank accounts. You can imagine what kind of complexity that is, and that although if you have less banks, you get usually better rates. Also, when we talked about bank reconciliation, if you have fewer banks, then they can stick to a certain format, and you have more control how you collaborate with those banks. Why is this important for you as well? Because it applies also to all field offices, and we will have only one bank and do on behalf payments for other entities. Yeah, so there will be only one bank. If you have a field office where already peacekeeping has an office, then perhaps peacekeeping, they already have a bank account, and they will do this in the future for you. The same applies if you have an office in other entities, and then you may perhaps, so not you personally, but your entity may serve other entities as well. This applies to outgoing payments. For incoming payments, we will, for the time being, keep more bank accounts, because we still have some incoming bank accounts where we cannot fully track where the money is coming from. So we first need to be fairly sure on that before we close bank accounts. But the goal is as well to reduce the number of incoming bank accounts as well. All the bank accounts that will remain, they will be connected via standard which is called SWIFT. SWIFT is a certain communication standard, and by that we will get bank details in a very standard way, and this helps us significantly in this bank reconciliation in order to compare what we have on the bank account and what we have in accounting. As said, this can create a lot of issues because if you have outstanding unreconciled bank data, this has implications that you cannot create a financial statement and so on. The second big change in this area is something which is called cash pooling. Cash pooling basically means if you have $100 on account A and $100 on account B, you pool this cash in order to invest it and do better investments. This mechanism here is called, there is a centralized, it's called a treasury fund, and every fund who, so to say, gives cash to the central fund has a relationship to this treasury fund. So this is the last point. The fund's equity in the trash fund represents the fund's cash position. In terms of the house bank, so this one or two bank, this is called the house bank concept, and there are different disbursement methods, and based on the currency and the disbursement method, the system will calculate via which bank a certain payment will be dispersed. So for instance, if you have a SEPA payment in the Eurozone and a certain currency, then there is an automatic mechanism that will determine via which bank this will be paid. And as said, this may not be a bank that is administered by your entity, but by another entity that is within Umoja. The cash control, we talked about this one earlier. Basically, the cash control is here implemented in this treasury module because payments are blocked if a fund or grant's cash balance is insufficient. So we talked about the relationship between every fund and grant to this treasury fund. So even if there is cash from other funds, if your fund does not have a sufficient cash position, then you will not be able to pay. This is just a schematic diagram how this looks like. You have the different entities, they work in Umoja. We have the SWIFT protocol, different payment mechanisms, and then we decide which bank is used for the payment. This is just another visualization of this example. So for instance, if you have a payment in euro plus SEPA, then it will be routed to the Chase Bank in London. And for all combinations, there's a predefined logic how those disbursements will be made. We understand that particularly in field offices today, there are often own bank accounts or agreements with UNDP and so on. So the future will be that those payments are dispersed through this house bank concept where we have one house bank per currency. think we can skip this. Yeah, what are the key benefits? So we will have fewer bank accounts. By that we will hopefully have lower bank fees, less administration. We will have an automatic upload of bank statements. All the via the SWIFT system, we will automatically get all the bank address data, so there is no manual collection of this information anymore. So you can again see there is a lot of changes where we have more automation in the future, and steps that are required today will not be needed anymore in the future. And based on this cash pooling, we can also maximize the investments of the organization. Yeah, I think we covered these ones already. Yeah, to summarize, treasury and cash management, the goal is to maintain only one or two bank accounts. One house bank may disperse payments on behalf of many locations, funds, and grants. The bank statements will be automatically uploaded via the SWIFT on a daily basis. The treasury module is basically the technical implementation of the cash control, and the central bank directory is populated from a SWIFT database. Are there any questions on treasury and cash management? Okay, so the next area is payroll and benefits management. This is particularly interesting from an employee perspective, so because it touches every one of us. How will you receive your payroll in the future, and how can you administer your health insurance? The first point is, again, the payroll is also highly integrated with all other functional modules. For instance, with time management, so for instance, as soon as you record overtime, this will be routed to payroll. Benefits administration, if you choose a certain health insurance, the premium will be processed to payroll, and so on. So although your entitlements have an impact on payroll. The important thing to highlight is that some of those data entries can be done via employee self-service, and they can directly hit payroll. For instance, if you take a rental subsidy, we covered this already this morning. So if you do a rental subsidy request, this can have a direct impact on your payroll. What are we doing in order to ensure that everyone gets the right salary on day one? So we currently have a test cycle which is called parallel payroll. It basically means that we do 3 iterations where we do a payroll run in the legacy system and already in the Umoja system, and we compare the results in order to be sure so that everyone gets the right salary after day one. So there is thorough testing already has already started. So by the time we go live, this should be in a good shape so that payroll should run without problems. Again, the benefits are we have one integrated system again with all the payroll systems, payroll data, so it's all the far easier to do reporting. Some of your grants, education grant, assignment grant, relocation grant, they will be processed through the human resource function module that we will talk about in a second. Today this was mainly done through accounts payable. This is another area where you can see that efforts are shifted from one place to another. Although there is an opportunity in terms of mobility, as of today, if you go on assignment to another duty station, you first need to transfer an IMIS script, and then you can get paid from the new IMIS instance. In the future, as it's all in one system, it's pretty easy to change duty stations to go on assignments because it's in the same system, and you will automatically paid based on this new information. Although one thing to highlight, in the future, every one of us will be responsible to maintain their bank details via self-service. So there is an employee self-service to maintain your bank data. You can go to the system, you can change it, and the lead time that has been defined so far is 10 days. So if you define it 10 days before the payroll run, then you will get the money to the new bank account. But it's up to you to change the bank account in the system in the future. The next part is benefits. So benefits refers to health and life insurance. The health and life insurance is also strongly interlinked to other function modules. So for instance, based on organizational management, based on the duty station that you're located in, the system will automatically know for which health insurance you're potentially entitled for. And there is something like called an entitlement validation engine. So already in the system, when you enter, if you would like to enroll to the health insurance, there is a validation engine, and it will check if you are entitled to do so, and then you have full transparency as soon as you enroll yourself or family members. So I think this is also a huge improvement. So in terms of speed and transparency. In terms of what are the benefits of this new tool, so it will be an employee self-service. So we also have a short demo shortly so we can show you how the user interface looks like to do these actions. All the staff members who are eligible for MIP, they will be enrolled automatically by the system, but this is only for the staff member, not for the family members. And we already talked about this validation engine that will validate the eligibility automatically. One more comment on after-service health insurance. So in the future, you can those contributions will be automatically deducted then from the joint staff pension fund system. So there is an interlink to this system as well. To summarize the key changes, so in terms of payroll and benefits management, it will be one centralized system. We talked about the support in terms of mobility if you're on assignment, although that a lot of those actions will be an employee self-service that can have an impact on payroll and also to administer your health and life insurance. Are there any questions on payroll and benefits management? So one more topic to go, and then we do the next break. This is an important topic because it has a lot of impact to you, although as managers. We talked about this cultural change of going towards employee self-services and managerial self-services, and this is particularly relevant in the area of human resources and travel management. So the next two topics, we will only do HR before the break, but this is there are a lot of changes, so therefore it's good to familiarize with those changes as an employee yourself, but also as a manager to see what this means. There are three subtopics under human resources. One is organizational management, the second is personal administration and entitlements, and the third one is time management. In terms of organizational management, this chart has a lot of details. The key takeaway for this is that you, not you yourself, but you need to provide the input in a sense to define who reports to whom in order to build the organizational structure. And this is very important that it's defined properly, because this will be used in a couple of workflows. For instance, in the leave request will automatically be routed to your manager. So therefore, if you are not assigned to the right manager, or if your staff is not properly assigned to you, then this leave request cannot be processed as planned. So therefore it's important to get this information right, and if we get this information right, there are huge benefits in terms of reporting, because you can have a full transparency again across entities. We can combine it with location information if you would like to know how many staff works in this country across all different entities by gender and so on. So in terms of reporting, as soon as you put this data once into the system, you have a lot of nice reports for analysis. There's a question in the back.
Yes, the information about first reporting and second reporting officer is in Inspira. So it's my question from earlier today. Is this automatically generated in Umoja, or do we have to enter it by hand?
Yeah, so we will have the slide on this. It comes in a second. Basically, this information will now be maintained in Umoja and will be transferred from Umoja to Inspira in the future. So in that sense, the single source of truth is the structure that you define in Umoja and not the one that is today in Inspira. So there was just a question of if you have to redo it. So I think this is definitely the starting point. What you can also include in the Umoja system, it's not limited to staff only. You can also include in the organizational structure non-staff categories like military observers, UNVs, consultants. So you can really, as a manager, define who of those different staff and non-staff categories works in your team, and this is being defined in Umoja so that you get an overview. I think in order to define those structures, it definitely makes sense to start with the data that is already in Inspira. However, I'm not sure to what extent this data is always correct and can be just automatically converted.
Yeah, a clarification. When you're offered a job here, you are given a job classification, and it's very specific as to who you report to. Now, is it discretionary? I can change the person now?
They have discretion to change. No.
I didn't get the question.
So the question was whether you have the discretion to change your reporting lines. No, because you have to declare what the structure is according to how the budget was created for your unit or for your division or department. So you'll have to record what in reality is the reporting lines, primarily because, and Marcus will cover this later, because it determines the workflow of certain things. If somebody applies for leave, that leave will be routed to the person that they report to. So you have to declare what the reporting relationships are, so that things like leave and other such transactions are routed to the right person. So if you don't record the structure properly, then the leave will go to the incorrect person to be approved, whereas the staff member reports to you. So it has to be, it has to reflect what is in reality the organizational structure.
Just following on this, EPAS and work planning is then still with Inspira, or is it with Umoja?
Inspira. This information can, however, also then be, it can be, so there is an interface between Inspira and Umoja, so that it can be converted to Umoja for read access, so if you would like to see this performance data in your management cockpit, but the data entry is still in Inspira and it's not in Umoja. Yes, please.
I happen to work in a unit that's been undergoing a lot of structural change over the last year, 14 months, thereabouts. None of that, all that change is in practice, but none of it is actually codified in anything like the payroll systems or anything else. And so I think I'm getting a message here that prior to the 1st of June, my director needs to ensure that these agreed realignments with the executive director are in fact instantiated explicitly in the system, correct?
Yeah, correct. Okay, as said, so it's not limited to staff, so you can include all the other non-staff into this organizational structure. It's a geographically integrated system. So it's really, in terms of reporting, it's a big step forward, although you have access and can see how do team structures look like in other entities, in other locations. So I think there's a lot of interesting information based on this. In terms of levels of hierarchy, there is no limitation. So we talked about these 4 levels when it comes to projects, but in terms of the organizational structure, there is no limitation. You can define that many levels that may make sense. I think we can cover this and that as well. Okay, the next area is personal administration and entitlements. as already highlighted, the key change is this employee self-service, including self-certification. A fundamental philosophy behind Umoja is that we try to stick to a maximum of 3 signatures, and in many cases the first signature or certification is the employee, him or herself. So in that sense you can see it's really a lean system, but it also brings trust and accountability to every one of us by being the first person to self-certify. There's an electronic submission of documents, electronic approvals. By that, there's a lot of printing, signing, mailing, photocopying is eliminated, at least for us in New York. This is a big issue. All those processes are still very paper-based and manual. In the future, this will be more in an automated way. Reduction of approval steps, we talked about this one. In the end, through this employee self-service, there will be a lot of duplicate tasks, all to be eliminated between human resources and payroll, because there's a direct connection between those systems. And although the second last point is important, so auditing and monitoring of transactions and entitlements. So even if there is more self-certification, there will be random checks and audits, and you still are supposed to show supporting documentation. But the big difference is it's not an upfront certification on a 100% basis, so that everyone is being audited in the future. It's more that HR does analysis and reports and then see where they would like to ask for supporting documentation, and then you will still need to prove it. So even if you have more trust right now, it's still also the responsibility, because the data that you enter into the system, you're responsible for it. So you cannot say this was a mistake, the rental subsidy was not $2,000, it was $4,000. So you are responsible for the data that you put into the system. Main differences: decreased need for human resource to be original supporting documentation. I think we covered this one. Let me see if there's anything else. You also get email notifications to staff upon PA processing and approval of entitlement. This brings us back to the topic that you have a lot of transparency. You always see what the status of your request and your entitlements are. And you as a manager will also have a far better overview of your workforce. In time management, you will see we have something like a calendar. So based on the leave request, you will then have an overview who is in the office and who is not. And in the end, also in terms of reporting, again, business intelligence will provide a lot of nice reports showing this information that is entered in the different modules. You as a manager, these are the steps that will be part of managerial self-service. So it's about approve absence, attendance, request for staff for annual leave, including advanced leave, home leave, family visit, reversed education grant travel, approve uncertified sick leave, endorse staff requests for special leave and rest and recuperation, endorse time entries for staff on when actually employed contracts, view absences, balances of staff members in team calendar, initiate contract renewal for staff, and initiate endorse temporary movement of staff. This will only be available in 2016. So the last point is still being developed, but as you can see, the whole approval of absences and leave, sick leave, and so on, this is then the role of the manager. So it's an online, it's just approve or reject. So it's a simple task, and we will see it in the demo in a minute, how the user interface for this will look like. We already had the question on interfaces, so I'd just like to go briefly on those interfaces. We have interfaces to Inspira, so the data that is collected in the organizational management module, this will be from Umoja to Inspira. So for instance, including the organizational units and positions, this will be transferred from Umoja to Inspira. The same is for all the human resource master data. So for instance, all our employee records, they can be transferred from Umoja to Inspira. What comes from Inspira to Umoja is performance management data. So this will be then part of this manager cockpit. All of what goes from Umoja again to Inspira is reference master data. So for instance, duty stations, salary scales, post adjustment amounts, they are all captured in Umoja and they will be available for Inspira as well. There's one more thing that goes from Inspira to Umoja. This is offer management new hire information. So if there is a new staff member, the data that you input into Inspira can be automatically transferred to Umoja. For consultants, unfortunately, that is not yet the case. This is still being in development, so it means this information has to be re-entered. It first needs to be entered to Inspira and for the time being ordered to Umoja. There's all the connection to EarthMed for medical clearance, for instance, for initial appointments and staff movement or official business travel. There's an interlink to the pension fund number. There's also an interlink to the United Nations laissez-passer number and expiry date, so this information is also available. Then we get an automatic upload of the DSA rates from the ICSC. For travel, we will cover this in a minute, and all the trip, the safety and security clearance, there's all the data that is automatically transferred from Umoja to the trip tool as well. Coming to the last part of human resources, this is time management. For time management, there is one important change or approach, and this approach, we call it negative time management. So the basic assumption in the future is that you are in the office or that you work unless you tell the system otherwise. So the default value is someone works, and only if you create a leave request, a sick leave request, and so on, then the system will record an absence. But there will be no positive recording, at least for us in New York. We have this right now, so there is someone tracking every day if you are in the office or not. So this will not exist anymore. The default value is yes, you work, unless you create a leave request. There is an exception to this rule for those staff that are that work on an hourly basis, for instance, sometimes translators, so where you really have to capture how many hours someone works. So then we do a positive time recording, so we really put this data into the system. But for the default value for the large number of staff will be this negative time recording approach, where you just enter leave requests and other absence requests. In terms of the workflow, as said, in some cases there's a one-level approval and sometimes a two-level approval. If it, for instance, a one-level approval is a leave request, and a two-level approval, so the leave request goes to the manager, that is the one level, and the two-level approval would be, for instance, annual leave. There is first the approval of the manager, and then there's all of the human resource business partner role. They need to approve it as well. And I said there is a lot of email notifications, so when you submit a leave request, you get a leave request. As soon as it's approved or rejected, you will be automatically notified. The two-level is for home leave, not for annual leave, for home leave travel. Yeah. Okay, and so what you can see, although as a manager you have an overview, and although as an employee, as a manager, you can checking quota balances, so if you would like to know how much annual leave you still have, and also for different absence types. So there is a lot of transparency as an employee and also as a manager. To summarize it, so we have this change going towards employee self-service and managerial self-service, including self-certification in some areas. We have electronic submission of documents and approvals. For instance, in the demo we will see if you have a new dependent, like a new child, you will just add the birth certificate online and send it electronically. There will be no printing, signing, mailing, etc. anymore. We reduced the number of approvers. As you can see in leave request, it's only one approver for a normal leave requests. There's also a decreased need for human resources to view original supporting documentation, so only for for audit purposes, then they would like, they may reach out to you. By that, we can increase capacity for human resources to focus on areas like capacity planning, staff development, and so on. Yeah, and as I said, there will be again a lot of reporting, transparency based on business intelligence, and I think this particularly holds true for this organizational management data when you have this overview of all the staff by gender and geography across all entities. I think this is a real nice benefit of the solution. Are there any questions on human resources? Yes, please.
Yeah, it was not very clear to me about the education grant. You know, there are some calculations the HR does. We don't know the formula because we are not privy to it, and come up with some figures. So is that now automated so that when I enter the school and the location, it comes up automatically?
So the education grant is one of the few, even the only exception in terms of the grants that is not yet implemented as an employee self-service. This is still being under development. So far it will be still a process where only the human resource business partner can enter this information. So for the time being, unfortunately, it's not yet a self-service. It hopefully will be soon, but for the time being it will be still someone else in the human resource department who will enter this information. And then this process, how you reach out to them, I think this is again a decentral decision, how you do it here locally, how you get to your HR business partner to do so. But unfortunately, it's not yet a self-service. Any further? Yeah, there was one more question.
So our personal documentation, for example, we've got certified copies of birth certificates with HR, and they're all put on file. They're all hard copies. Will that all be scanned and put on the system, or is it? How will that work? Or will we asked to do that?
So it now, I think it depends a bit on the area. So if you, for instance, take adding a new dependent, as just said, if you have a birth certificate, you create a new dependent in the system, you add this dependent to your family, and you will just include an online copy of the birth certificate, and that's it. So human resource will not receive a hard copy of this document and store it somewhere. So it's up to the employee to scan it, and then human resources may reach out to you and say, can I see the hard copy of this birth certificate? But it's the assumption is that we said there is a decreased need for human resources to view the original documentation. The same is for rental subsidy. So you will include a scan of your lease to the system, and then they may reach out to you and ask for the file. But it's not that 100% of all the lease agreements will be collected on paper and that they will be given to HR for filing. So there's really a new approach in terms of having it more electronically and only on a case-by-case basis than to really view the original supporting documentation. Perhaps after the break, I think I can set it up. So in terms of the demo, I will do it right after the break because we need to set it up then on the computer first. I would say we do 50.
Maybe just before you go on break, just to let you know, after the break, we'll do travel management and services delivery. Just a show of hands. How many of you do travel for either yourself or your team members or your team supervisors, but you travel yourself or you travel others? Show of hands. Okay, almost all. Big changes. So we'll review some of that after the break. In terms of services delivery, how many of you perform services for other entities within the organization, other departments, offices for which you get cost recoveries, you recover costs from? Anyone? Okay, one. So, okay, what we'll do is we'll spend a little more time on travel and go very quickly through services delivery. I think the important point is to get to the BI and also to get to explain some of the links where you will find everything we've presented today and other information from the Umoja Academy, so you can go in on a selective basis and decide which other of the materials you want to read. There's a lot of material in there, a lot of detailed material as well, so you can take advantage of that. So I think it's more important to try to get to that and try and close up by as quickly as before 5 as we can. Okay, so we have take 15 minutes. That will get us back here at, do the math?
55.
Okay, 3:55, 5 to 4.
Technician, could you, the microphone is not working, the handheld.
Okay.
Test.
antenna right at the back.
So Bridget also said these are questions which she had
Okay.
raised. They have not yet been addressed, and I think it's very critical.
Okay. Thank you.
There's someone, internet is not working. Internet on the computer is not working. If I just plug it to my computer, it will be
Yes, yeah, this is it, yeah. That's UNEP Habitat.
We have not all signed.
No, you should. I don't know.
No, this is for.
That's a UNEP?
This is for. Oh no. This is for morning or this is for afternoon?
This says afternoon session, yeah.
For afternoon, okay.
Yeah.
So I think, let me just take it.
Okay.
Because that side.
Okay. Ready?
No, 1 second. Yeah, you will show it. It's all in the United Connections. We'll show it wherever you can find it. You don't have to.
No?
Then I need to. Should we start?
Yeah.
Should we? Okay. Okay. So let's continue, please. We now would like to give you a short system demo of the Umoja solution. We will show you a scenario of employee self-service and managerial self-service to give you the look and feel of the solution. In this example, you will see, I hope you can see it roughly. So we start off by typing the user ID and the password. So by the time we go live, every one of you will also get a user ID and the password. And we will now have a look how you can add a dependent to your profile. So this is the first scenario, and then we will also do a leave request in the system from an employee perspective and a manager perspective. 1 second, I need to go back here. I want to show you This is the entry screen. One second. This screen here, even though unfortunately it's not very, the resolution is not as good, but you have those different areas, and here you can start all the employee self-services. So you can start in the top left. You can choose entitlements. You can choose life and work events. For instance, if you would like to add a dependent, time management, if you would like to create a leave request, personal information. You can also do the insurance and benefits and travel. So this will always be your entry screen, and then you select the employee self-service that you are interested in. And now we will start the dependent scenario. So in this case, we do go to dependency allowance, and we would like to add a child in this scenario. So we select first the date when this will be valid, then we enter the name of the child. We select the gender. The next is all the date of birth of the child. Then we need to also include the country of birth and nationality. And then you also say define the status, if single or married, and then you can also click if this is a dependent that is financially dependent on you. So, and then you have a small box where you can enter a comment. So even if you now can't read the details, you can see it's pretty simple. It's just one screen. In this case, we now also attach the birth certificate as a proof, and then basically you click on accept the terms and conditions, and you click on submit. So it doesn't even take 1 or 2 minutes. It's quite simple. You just enter the data fields that you will find on the screen. In the next scenario, we will see how an annual leave looks like. So you again go to the first same starting screen. This time we select time management. So you start in time management. You have now a choice of different leave requests, be it annual leave, home leave, and so on. In this scenario, we will just create a standard annual leave. So what you will select is the type of absence, and then an start and an end date. And again, you will see you have another comment field, so you can include a comment for your manager if you like to. And what you can see is also that the approver name, the manager, is already pre-populated based on the organizational structure. So this is an information that is already in the system, and then you click submit. What we will do now is, as we have submitted the request, we will now have a look at the manager self-service inbox, so to see how this leave request shows up in the manager dashboard. So you can see here the manager dashboard, and there is a new item being shown here. Then you can open this leave request. This is now, you click on this link, and now you can see this is the leave request, start date, end date from the following employee. You can read the comment, and then you can either approve or reject, and you can also include a comment. So as you can see, it doesn't take much time. So this, in this example, this video was just 3 minutes. So, and we did we added a dependent, we entered the leave request, we approved the leave request. So employee self-service, managerial self-service. So it's quite an easy process as long as you follow the standard procedure. This was a first experience for you to see how the interface looks like. Unfortunately, now you can't see the very details, but you can also have a look at this video, and then order. You can go to Sandbox Systems and see how the solution works itself. But it just should give you a first feeling. Yes, please.
So you also included the next step, which is then that you confirm that you have taken the leave or that there are any changes?
So what do you mean? So if you don't take this leave, then you can cancel your leave request, but you don't
Or
have
you
to.
can change the dates.
Yeah, sure. You can. So if you have a leave request for, let's say, 1 week, and then it has been approved, and a few days later you think, oh no, it's not 1 week, it's 2 weeks, then you can change your leave request. So, but you do not have to approve it again. So you send the request, the manager approves it, and then if you don't tell the system otherwise, then the system will think you take the leave as approved.
But I assume the manager has to approve amendments.
Yeah, for the change, yeah, then the manager will have to approve again, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, any other questions to the video? Okay, then we proceed with travel management. This is going to be an interesting topic. So.
Okay. So with travel management, I just want to show you 8 steps that we thought, looking at many travel processes in various duty stations. Some were more steps, some were less steps, but really the steps were that we thought were the most often, most frequent, where staff member enters a travel request on paper, gets the supervisor to approve the travel request, it goes to the program manager and they approve it. The department head normally likes to certify, or not certify, but approve travel as well. That goes to then the admin assistant who enters the travel in Umoja. The certifying officer then in the executive office, as we have in New York, or in your case, your certifying officer goes in and says, well, that's authorized travel. We have funding for it. The funding source is good. So the certifying officer approves the travel, certifies the travel, and then it goes off to the travel assistant in the travel unit who enters this into their system to generate whatever itineraries are required. And then there may be some dialogue between you and that travel office as to which is the most ideal itinerary. And once that gets settled, it's the travel office approver, the final person in the travel office says, yes, I approve this, issue the tickets. So generally about 8 steps, like I said, sometimes 1 or 2 less, sometimes 1 or 2 more. Under the new Umoja system, we will try to get as close as possible to the 3-signature rule, and in Umoja, travel works like this. Marcus showed you a demo of the employee self-service entry screen. One of the items on the employee self-service entry screen is travel. So let's assume this travel is for you. You are traveling, so you are requesting the travel. You will go into Umoja, you will click on that travel box in that screen, and you will start to initiate the travel. You'll provide details like where you're traveling to, from, and to, so where you're going from and where you're going to, what dates you're traveling, and what account this travel is going to be charged against. So that's the details you'll enter. Behind that, or in parallel to that, you may do other things like contact the travel office to find out, hey, what are the flights available, what are the routes available, can I get the right sort of itinerary that I want. That stays, that's normal things that you can do, and that's outside of the process. Then it roots off, in that travel initiation process, you do 2 things. One is you enter all those details and you self-certify that this travel has been approved or discussed with your manager. So you self-certify, I have approved, I'm authorized to travel, this has been discussed with my manager, you tick that box. So you self-certify that. Secondly, you have to go into the leave system and request official business leave. That will automatically get routed to your manager, who has to approve your official business leave from date to date. So the manager knows by approving the leave that you are going to be away on official business travel from this date to that date. You've self-certified that there's been a discussion around the travel, and you are approved to travel. And now when the travel and shipment approver receives this is a new role. Used to be the certifying officer. This is a new role, and it's up to the divisions units, heads, how they want to allocate this role, who they want to map it to. So far, OCHA have decided that they want to centralize this role. So they'll have a few people around their different offices who will be designated with the role travel and shipment approver. Why they decided to do this? Because the travel and shipment approver needs to know in great detail the travel policy, the rules and regulations around travel. This travel approver needs to make sure that if the travel was under the 21-day threshold, that a justification was required and that the justification was indeed provided. This travel and shipment approver also looks at the fund code that is being used to charge this travel and says, yes, I agree, that's the right fund code, that travel can proceed. So the travel and shipment approver is a role that your entity will decide who has that role. Once the travel and shipment approver says, yes, okay, to proceed, it goes to the travel office, who now look at the itinerary, take the itinerary that's the ideal itinerary according to the rules, and issues the ticket for you. So they do the final approval. The travel office is the travel unit in your area. So in Yunnan, it's the travel unit. In New York, it's the travel and transportation section. In other duty stations, they may be called something else. But when we say travel office, that's what we're talking about. So that's the three-step process for travel if you are traveling on business. In the travel module, in the travel solution, we have 12 enterprise roles. So the traveler, we have up to 3 enterprise roles for the travel administrator. So we have a travel administrator who can enter travel on behalf of. Many of the entities, OCHA, UNEP, decided that travel for all D directors and below will be done by the traveler themselves. Only ASG and USG get travel done on behalf of. So only ASG and USG will have their travels entered by a travel administrator. You also have a travel administrator role for non-staff. So if you travel, a lot of people to conferences, member state delegations, people who are not staff, you have a special travel administrator role. Person who has that role is responsible for creating what we call an HR mini master. So some basic HR details for the people who are traveling. So you enter the event into the system. So there's an opportunity to say, this is the conference, this is the meeting, and these are the details of the meeting. Go to the HR mini master, enter all the individuals' names, then link each individuals to this event so that you can produce your list of your roster of people that are going to be traveling, their DSA amounts, go through to the financial process, produce the amounts in cash if that's how you pay them, get the sign-off and all the details required as you pay your participants their money, go back into the system and do a on behalf of travel claim to close the whole travel out. For staff members, there's an express travel claim process, so you can, if your travel has not changed, that means you've traveled to the itinerary that you said you were going to travel to, you've traveled on the dates that you said you were going to travel on, and there's been no change or delay or anything like that, then there's an express travel claim process that gets your claim processed very, very quickly. Any questions? I know that was a very quick. Yes, please.
Thanks very much. 2 questions. One is, since all UN travel needs to be cleared in the TRIP system or entered, is this directly feeding into that?
Very good question. So there are a number of interfaces, and I'll start from the bottom. There are a number of interfaces that the travel system goes directly interfaces into. One is to the medical services if you require medical clearance. So automatically it'll flag this requires medical clearance, you need to get medical clearance. To the DSS system for TRIP, it will populate directly your itinerary. So your flight details will be in there. All you have to do enter your accommodation details, because that's not entered in the Umoja travel solution. You enter your accommodation details and you submit it for travel security clearance. You have an interface into the UNLP system. So if you require an UNLP, it populates all your personnel details that's required in UNLP, and it can start your application for you. We get DSA rates directly from from ICSC, so we get the latest DSA rates coming in from those tables. So those are the interfaces. We have also, because everyone's working in the same system, you have global access to travel processing offices. So the travel unit here, if somebody is traveling from here to New York and then wants to travel from New York to Rio de Janeiro, the travel office here doesn't have to arrange the travel out of here. They can call the travel office in New York, route the travel through to them and say, New York, please process this travel for me. So they will process it out of New York, but they'll charge the right fund here. So travel processing can be done from anywhere because we're all working in the same system. The people who work in the travel processing office are approving officers. So once they approve, they review travel and they approve, tickets get issued. So there's no further approval required. The role called travel and shipment officer requires real strong familiarity with the travel policy, the travel regulations and rules. So those things are really key. So when you are having a discussion around who should have the role travel and shipment approver, please understand that it just can't be anyone. Over time, we are having a discussion with the colleagues from Umoja. They said managers are feeling really concerned about the fact that they don't have a clear role in approving travel. But over time, I think they will get used to it. But if they don't, then Umoja has to make sure that those managers become very familiar with the travel policies and get the role travel and shipment approver. I very much doubt that will happen. And lastly, travel ESS it's a self-initiation. So it's travel is part of an ESS process. Where you have to enter details yourself, you have to self-certify that certain things have taken place, and accept the terms and conditions. If you're in the back office, have to deal with after the travel is taking place and the travel agent sends you the invoice for the travel, and you have to match now the invoice with the travel that has been approved. Umoja makes it very easy for an automatic matching of these processes. So electronic invoices come into the system and get matched immediately. If you don't have a process for express travel claim within Umoja, you have a process for express travel claim, and I think I spoke a little bit about that. It vastly reduces processing time, feeds directly into the payroll or into a payment cycle. So that you could get settled. Each traveler has to have a travel profile in the system, but based on the fact that you have an HR record, so these are just additional details that will be collected. I spoke about this travel administrator, non-staff role, enterprise role in the organization. Some offices have decided to provide help to people who arrange large meetings of non-staff, and they'll create a special unit to help them. I know they're considering this in New York. I don't know to what extent this will be something that's considered here, especially when people who regularly do lots of non-staff travel already have capacity to do this. They just need to be given the right roles in the system in order to process these non-staff travels. Because of Umoja, we get more reliable data on tickets and expenditures, so we know we can run reports on how many travels we have between New York and Nairobi, how many of these travels are on Emirates, how many of these travels are on KLM, where are we getting the best deals, what about the average prices we're paying, so that we can start to get better deals out of the airlines, know how much money we're spending on each of the airlines. And of course, member states always want details around travel, and now we can report on any aspect of travel that we want to. So full transparency. So just to summarize again, big changes. This 3-signature rule, including the traveler who self-certifies, is going to be in effect. The traveler initiates the travel in the system. Certifying officers, in other words, the travel and shipment approver, requires better knowledge of travel policies. We have now access to global consolidated travel data. We spend less time processing invoices because of this automatic matching of travel invoices and the travel request. And we have access to an express travel claim facility. I think the important other thing, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry to cut you.
No worries.
I was not so clear. When does the travel get into the system the first time? Is there a facility to have this quarterly travel plan inserted? And the second question is that in terms of reporting and transparency, can any staff see who is going where for the next, let's say, month?
Can any staff? It depends what role you have to see other things. So if you have a role, if you are in the travel processing office, then you will have a role that will give you visibility to who's traveling where. So you have that role. If you don't have a role in travel, you will not have the ability to see that. So it depends on what security role you have. So your visibility and transparency depends on the role that you have. As for the travel plan, it's always a good that you have this discipline of creating a travel plan. I think all that facilitates is pre-approval sign-off, in a parallel system. But there's no facility to enter a long-range travel plan into Umoja. What you can do is enter all your travel requests sequentially. You can enter, I'm traveling next week to New York. I'm traveling the following month to Bangkok. I'm traveling even further. So you can enter all those sorts of travels in, but individually, not your spreadsheet of travel. Am I answering your question?
Yes, you're answering, but the point is that we have a quarterly travel plan where it has to be pre-approved before you actually request the travel. And the second question was that to allow people, for example, as staff who know somebody is going to China, for example, next week or next month, then I can, engage with the staff to do other things that are related in China.
You get that? Yeah. I didn't quite get it, but is it more about having a view of who's traveling when? Like I said, it's the role that you get in the system. So your role will determine what you see going forward. So transparency determines on your role. And in terms of entering your travel plan in, if you are diligent and want to enter your travel plan in advance, you get it entered in advance, and it depends how the travel office wants to deal with that. Yeah, outside the system. Yeah. So the travel plans, normally quarterly travel plans, and UNEP and OCHA do the same as well. They do their quarterly travel plan. They get that approved from a budgetary perspective, but that's outside the system. That's not in Umoja. Yes, please.
So I understand when you do a travel request, you refer to a project which then links to a budget line.
Yes.
But when it gets combined, let's say I go to New York for project 1, from there I fly to Zagreb for project 2, and I come back. How does it get allocated to the? Is it my decision which legs get allocated to which project, or how does it work, or is it automatic?
It's not. What you usually can do is that you can say you split it and say 50% goes to account A and 50% to account B, but then it's up to you to make this call how you would like to split it. Yeah, because this depends then how many days you stay where and on other things, but you can usually you can assign it to to multiple accounts and spread it.
Thanks, Marcus. Any other questions? Please.
I just want to make sure I don't make a mistake, because I don't see, for example, in this automated system, the role of the director of the division in approving travels. Because if a line manager already approves your travel, does the director up there need also to have a look at it and say, yeah, it can proceed?
In Umoja, no. So in Umoja, all you have is the traveler making the travel request and doing two things. One is producing entering a leave request to say I'm going to be on official travel from this date to that date. That leave request is channeled directly to your manager. If you're requesting the travel, goes to your manager. He says, yes, I approve this. So he now knows now you are on official business travel from this date to this date, right? You also charge the certain budget account, budget fund. So the funds are available. It's approved by the travel and shipment approver. That's taken care of. And you self-certify in there that I've discussed this with the manager and this is approved travel. So that's done. The department head doesn't play a role in it at all. Any questions? No. Okay. So we will go on to services delivery, which is something that you don't do, but you need to understand a little bit about how Umoja deals with how we distribute services and how we distribute costs. A couple of, I'm going to skip that and go here. So there are three types of services delivery. The module is called SD, Services Delivery Module. And what happens is if you have ad hoc services, like I'm running this event, right? I go to the service catalog, the cost recovery catalog, and I choose the service that I want. I want this room, conference room 4. I want video capability. I want webcasting. I want sound. I want translation. So you identify those services. Based on the cost of what those services have been determined to be, that will create a work order, a service order. And that service order will get pushed to the conference services saying you need to provide these services on this date and you will charge me for it. So the accounting transaction will go from the notification to the service order, internal charge goes into the financial documents, an inter-account transfer, so you use the fund code and you get paid for it. If you had to, and these services, we have currently 1,261 services that are listed. These all have been approved by the controller as cost recovery services. The rate and the conditions of those costings are in the system already. If there are more new services that you want to add to it, you'll have to go through both the central master data team to get the service put onto the service catalog, but you'll also have to get the pricing approved by the controller. Important part of that is some of the services that you get revenue for are spendable. That means it comes back into your budget. You can allocate it in your budget and spend it. Others are non-spendable because of their particular nature. They will have to be either returned to member states in some cases, or something else needs to be pushed somewhere else. So those are spendable and non-spendable. The majority of services that are provided and that you request are spendable services. So you will get, if you are the deliverer of those services, you are allowed to take that revenue and spend it in your budget. So if the organization that you're providing a service for is an external organization, UNDP, UN Women, they're not part of the immediate secretariat and they're not within Umoja. In Umoja, you create a sales billing order for them. That produces an invoice which you send to the person that you've delivered services to, and they pay you back like any other good debtor. So that's how both the billing for external services and billing for internal services work. There's a group of services that are internal cost allocation services. Within Umoja, we have the facility, and you use the CO module, the controlling module. Let's take cleaning services. So cleaning services on a monthly basis, when the accounts are run and you do your month-end closing, based on a key statistical figure. And a key statistical figure is number of staff or square meters of a place. So based on whatever statistical key figure you put in there, it'll take the cost of cleaning services for the month, determine using the statistical key figure what the apportionment is, and all the departments and offices at every month end will get charged with their portion of the cost. So at every month end, you know what your services cost and how these services are apportioned to you based on that statistical key figure. So this is an automatic cost allocation process that's built into Umoja, and we use the controlling module to do that. Any questions? Please.
That's maybe a bit too detailed as a question, but
try.
Here in Nairobi at UNON, if you book 1 hour of video conferencing facility, for some inexplicable reason costs several $100s. So will this system allow us to compare prices for services across the organization?
Yeah, the catalog of services will have prices for different locations because labor costs are not the same throughout. So yes, technically yes, you can see the prices in different locations. And good luck. Okay, so if there are no other questions on that, I'm going to, these are all highly technical things that will not interest you. Basically, structured service catalog accessible to all offices across the globe. Integrated system with the capability to receive requests, process work orders, and perform cost recovery transactions in real time. Previously, when you wanted a service or somebody wanted a service from you, there's a lot of emails and traffic flying back and forth. Now you just enter the service in Umoja, request it, and the other person gives you a sales quotation. You like it, you say, yes, go ahead, here's my account, charge it, and away you go. Detailed mass allocation of costs. I've talked to you about using the cleaning services example of how you can mass allocate costs at the end of a month. And of course, operational financial data being combined for management reports. The controlling module gives you endless possibilities to report. And I think as team managers, you'll get more familiar with business intelligence and how that works and what the different fields are, and you're going to get a lot of richness and value out of the system and the data that's there. Plant maintenance is not something that you will use a lot of, but basically it's really talking about maintaining equipment and how one maintains equipment in order to prolong the life of an asset. I used the example this morning of that generator, that power unit sitting out there. It needs to be serviced at a particular time, and how the plant maintenance module manages and reserves the equipment and the labor hours needed to do that when it's required. So mostly used in peacekeeping. The plant maintenance, I think, won't be used by you in your role, but possibly UNON will use it for maintenance, building maintenance, and other services that they provide. So master data management, I think we spoke about it in a number of ways. We spoke about material master, we spoke about vendor master, we spoke about grants master data. So you have a concept, an understanding of master data. I think given the time that we have, we should get to business intelligence and then show you all the linkage to Unite connections where all the data is that you can take full advantage of both this presentation as well as other Umoja Academy lectures and trainings. So you want to take on?
Okay, so we will now go to business intelligence. For business intelligence, the first thing to know is, so when we talk about the Umoja system, we need to differentiate a little bit further and also see what is the Umoja system and what is the business intelligence system. So in the Umoja system, we usually, when you see the acronyms ECC, Enterprise Core Component, and SRM, which is a supplier relationship management, these are the modules that we use and that we call Umoja. These are this is the system that you use in order to input data and perform transactions in the system. In addition to this ECC and SRM systems, we have the BI system, and BI is the business intelligence systems. If it now comes to data analysis, you can do what we call transactional reporting in the ECC and SRM system. However, this kind of reporting is limited. You usually just get flat lists, and although it also impacts performance. So if you run really huge analysis in the ECC and SRM system, it can have an impact on the performance for other users that want to process transactions in the system. So therefore, I would say in 95% of the cases, you will only use business intelligence for data analysis. Only in a few cases, you do this analysis in the ECC and SRM system. But just to let you know, there is all the reporting functionality in this system as well. And there is one benefit of ECC and SRM system reporting compared to the business intelligence system, and this is that the analysis in the ECC and SRM system is real time. In business intelligence, you can have a delay of up to 24 hours. The reason for that is that on a daily basis, the data from the ECC and SRM system is being replicated to the business intelligence system. So depending on the time snapshot when you do your report, you can have a delay of 24 hours. However, business intelligence is the tool to go in terms of data analysis, because you can do a lot of things. You can do aggregation, trend analysis, you can do drill downs, you can define key performance indicators, you can define thresholds, and you have a really nice visuals that you can get out of business intelligence. And therefore, for 95% of your analysis, you will usually use the tool business intelligence. In terms of business intelligence, there are three different components, and we will have a demo of those components also in a minute, but I'd like to introduce them first. The first component is called dashboard. So the dashboard is particularly focusing on managers, and a dashboard basically allows to define key performance indicators for the areas of interest. So for instance, in terms of financial data, you may be interested in what are my remaining funds, how many funds have I already committed and pre-committed, or in terms of procurement data, what are my top 10 vendors that I spent my money on, how many shopping carts are outstanding, or in terms of human resources, how many leave requests are outstanding, whatever. So every key performance indicator can be defined in this dashboard, and the goal is that as you as a manager start off having a look at this dashboard, and this dashboard then should give you the indicator where you should further drill down into further details. So therefore, the first challenge is to define what are the most relevant key performance indicators that are relevant to managers on a daily or regular basis, and then you start off from there to get an indication where you may have to go deeper in terms of data analysis. So this is the dashboard. The second component is called formatted reports. Formatted reports are pre-configured reports that are usually being defined for a broader audience. So for instance, the report that are being shared with the member states, they are pre-configured in a very nice format in this system, and everyone has access to those formatted reports. However, you do not have a lot of additional functionalities. You can put a filter here and there, but you cannot add further data to those kind of pre-configured reports. but they fulfill a purpose because they are relevant to a broad audience. These formatted reports, as said, they are accessible to everyone. So everyone who has a user in Umoja also have a user in business intelligence, and those formatted reports do not have restrictions. When it comes to the third component of business intelligence, these are the ad hoc reporting. And ad hoc reporting is restricted to business intelligence power users. So if you remember, we discussed this morning those experts being called business intelligence power users. So there is a specific training for these kind of users because they need to know how to deal with this tool, and it's not it requires training, and therefore this access to ad hoc reporting is limited to those business intelligence power users. And this is the most powerful area of business intelligence because you have access to all the different data objects and you can combine it in the way that you would like to run the analysis. So it's not a pre-configured set of data that you will see, but it's up to you to slice and dice the data, to add additional data fields here and there. And if I'm saying you, so it's up to the business intelligence power user to work in this ad hoc reporting. We will now have a look at one sample scenarios of an analysis, how this could look like. We need to change, one second, I need to change to the other computer. Okay, so as said, so we will have now one example scenario for a data analysis where we will touch all those three different components. We will start off in the manager dashboard, then go to the formatted reports, and then finally to the ad hoc area. This is the current version of the dashboard, how it looks like. What you can see on the left-hand side is we included some financial data. For instance, you can see the trend line of budget consumption and pre-committed and committed funds. You can also see the open accounts payable, open accounts receivable. So, but as said, you can define all the further key performance indicators in that sense. On the right-hand side, we have included some supply chain indicators. For instance, the number of outstanding shopping carts, the number of approved shopping carts, and we can also see a statistic on the number of expiring contracts. We also have a functionality you can refresh this view. There's also some built-in help in order to explain what the nature of those key performance indicators is. In this example, we will now put a filter and select one purchasing group, and then we can see here in the overview of expiring contracts that there is one contract that is supposed to expire in less than 15 days. So this could be an indicator where we could say, now let's have a deeper look in what kind of contract is it that is supposed to expire soon. So we now switch to the second component, being the reports. And for those reports, as you can see, you now have a few filter mechanisms. As said, these kind of reports are available to everyone, to all users in business intelligence. In this example, we will now also filter for the purchasing group as in the dashboard, and then we will try to find some further details on this contract that is supposed to expire within less than 5 days. So we select the purchasing group. In this case, it's PD Vehicles Team. And then we refresh the report, so we will now only get the data that is relevant to this purchasing group. As soon as it's loaded, you can now see more details to this contract. So we can now see the supplier name, the country of this supplier, and if we scroll further to the right, we will now get more detailed date, so we can see the days to expiry is basically 1. Before we could only see it's less than 5 days, and now we know it's only 1 day left. Now we go to the ad hoc area, because in the pre-configured report we don't get further information, so we try to to find further information about this contract. This is now the view of this ad hoc area for the business intelligence power users. We do similar steps, so we search for a certain purchasing group, and then we can now add additional data fields to this data record. In our example, we will now include the product category so that we can see which product categories will be affected by this expiring contract. So we will now, it's just a drag and drop, so you can see we include an additional data element, and then we can now see the breakdown by product category, that $100 was for transportation components. So theoretically, we could also add further data elements that are relevant to this scenario. As said, this is just one sample scenario to show you how those different components are interlinked and also show you how the interface looks like. As said, the third component of the ad hoc reporting is limited to business intelligence power users, and the other areas of business intelligence are open to everyone. Are there any questions to business intelligence? Yes, please.
Yes, thanks. I'm not sure if I missed it earlier regarding the discussion on SSFAs, but in the context of what you just presented, it would be quite useful if this tool would allow us to quickly monitor which of our SSFAs are expiring and what date. And I'm wondering whether there's a functionality built into this to allow for that.
So if we again talk about this contribution and grants, so on this first manager dashboard, if this is a key performance indicator that is not only relevant to you but to a lot of managers, then we can just, our team can add this to this manager dashboard and say we could have this as one indicator. So it's up to us, to all of us, to define which key performance indicators are on this dashboard, and our teams is also looking for input, which are the most meaningful key performance indicators for managers. So if you have ideas and proposals, we are also looking for thresholds, because it's not only important to see the value, but it's also, we would like to be prescriptive in a way to say, okay, like in the contract, if it's less than 5 days, then we show a red light. Or if it's, this is often the challenge to define where is a good threshold in order to say this is still green, but this is an area you should look for. So yes, it's possible we can define those indicators. Going back what we discussed in the grants management solution, you can see potentially we could include how many projects do we have open or how much of the project fund has already been consumed. So everything is possible. It needs to be defined. Also in terms of those pre-configured reports, the business intelligence power users, they can provide reports to the broad audience. So if you have a business intelligence power user in your team, for example, then this person could say, this is the most meaningful report for our team, and then he can define this report and share it then with the broader community. So therefore, it helps to have those power users because they can slice and dice the data and then share it with the broader community. But you need to be somehow familiar with the business intelligence system in order to know how it works and also which data objects to select, because as you can see, it's a really huge system and we have so many data fields, so therefore you need to be somehow familiar to find the right data fields to feed those indicators. Yeah.
I think it's important to add, and Marcus may have alluded to this, the business, the BI, the business intelligence power user is not an IT person. The business intelligence power user is a business person, a person who understands your business processes, a person who understands your business, your team's work. So that's more the person who will be a power user. And the power user technology part of it, that will be trained on. So how to use the system, how to get the best use out of the business intelligence, they will be trained on that. But it's more important that the person has a full and good understanding of the business.
Yes, please.
We have that type of staff. We have that type of staff called PMO, Program Management Officer, which has a lot of financial responsibilities and accounting responsibilities. How would you see that existing role and positioning with regards to that question? The BI especially and Umoja in general.
So I think these project management officers, they could be very good candidates to become those business intelligence power users. So in order to retrieve the right data in order to support their work. So I think particularly those ones, managers, those people that have usually produced reports today that are often asked, how do we perform in this area compared to that area? All people that work about those questions and think about this, these are potential candidates of business intelligence power users. As said, as a rough number, we think we will need at least 500 power users. So we do not only want to have a central team, because I think we need to bring really the data to the different decentral teams so that you can do those analysis for your reports. So in that sense, I think that would be good candidates for becoming power users. Yes, please.
Hi. I'm wondering if the databases of this analysis can also be broadened to, project-specific information or agency-specific information. So, for example, for UNEP, they're trying to track how our projects are doing in terms of implementing milestones, achieving outcomes. Also, we're trying to track longer-term impact. So I don't know if we have the possibility to kind of personalize the system by adding in, existing databases, but then using this system to analyze the data.
Yeah. So as said, the business intelligence is a separate system from the Umoja system in a sense. So therefore, it's also not limited to Umoja data. So for instance, we also have past data from IMIS in the business intelligence systems, and potentially we can include any further data source to this business intelligence system. So for instance, we could include PIMS data, but you cannot do it personally. So it's not up to the user to include this data because it's a technical step. This data needs to be added to the so-called data cubes in that system that needs to have a certain logic and so on. So therefore, you need to specify which data fields of which system do you want to include into the business intelligence, and then our technical team can include this data as well, and then it will be available in the tool as well. But it cannot be done by the user by just adding the data. So it's a centralized but it's not limited to Umoja, so every other system can potentially be included. It just needs to be specified and then technically integrated. Any further questions? Okay, then mindful of the time, we try to finish by 5, so we have... there are a few more summary slides. We will now not go into the detail, but so basically we try to summarize the key changes for managers. So we have summarized what are the key changes for managers before go live. So you should get involved into review, for instance, user access mapping. You should prepare for the blackout period. You should try to build capacity and capability, for instance, building local process experts, building business intelligence users, training, and so on and so forth. After go live, then use this kind of data opportunities in terms of business intelligence, also explore further opportunities for improvement, also specify requirements for future enhancements, and so on. For the other function areas, we also have summarized the key changes. I will now skip them, but if you would like to have a short summary, what is key for you as a manager, what is changing, what we should particularly focus on, we would recommend you those summary slides here. Okay, so now coming back, where can you find all this information? The information is stored on Unite Connections. Who knows Unite Connections, or who uses Unite Connections already? Okay, only a few. So Unite Connections is accessible to everyone. You use your email address and your password from your email account. There you will find what we call the deployment guidebook. The deployment guidebook is a very detailed description of all activities that are related to Umoja. And in addition, you will also find all the Umoja Academy training materials. So this is the link. If you enter on your computer unite.un.org/connections, then you get to the screen, and you can also get access to all this Umoja data. There is no registration or any approval step necessary. You just go to the system, you enter your email user and password, and then you will find all the Umoja information. There is a category which is called Umoja Academy, and below that you will find the different events that we had in different locations. We will share this link here with the Nairobi training team, so they will send you the presentation and the link so that you can just click on it and you will directly find the materials. And as said, you will just need your email user and password for the access to these materials. Are there any questions on the references or anything? Yes.
I was checking the website of Umoja, umoja.net or something. Is it the same materials or what's the difference?
Yeah, so there is Umoja.net is not anymore so we have an external website which is umoja.un.org, and this is for an external audience, and this is still valid, so you can go there as well, but you won't find the Umoja Academy training materials. You will just find some basic materials. Umoja.net is we used this in the past, but now the key resource for you for all the materials is Unite Connections. So that has been a decision by the CITO that we should use Unite Connections for all these document sharing. So therefore, you should go to Unite Connections. There you will find the most updated and the most comprehensive set of materials. Yes, please.
I would suggest to give this to attendees to workshops, because I was using it through all this session, and for me it was really easy, because for those that are probably in the back, it's not easy to see the characters. So I find it by looking, but it's recommended. Thanks.
To share the materials. Yeah, very valid point. We although surprised at this time, unfortunately, it's not a very good quality and of this presentation and all the materials, but we should definitely tell the local training coordination team that it's being shared with the audience, so then you have it on your screen and it's far easier to follow. Yeah, so we also have the evaluation surveys. I'm not sure if everyone has a hard copy, so we would highly appreciate if you could just give us a short feedback so that we can also further evolve the program. From our side, thanks a lot for spending the day with us. We hope that it has been a valuable day for you, and that we will jointly then have a successful go-live of the Umoja solution for Cluster 3 and later on also for Cluster 4. And we are still here. If you have additional questions, then please let us know. Thank you.